G'day everyone. So I'm Strider Durinks from the SES. I'm the unit commander. I've been a member of the SES for 15 years, 10 years in a Bellingen, which means we moved to the area in 2008 and I was stuck in Coffs in the 2009 flood, refuged at the CX Coffs there. We weren't actually in town here in 2009. We bought it in September 2009 and had the November flood that came through under our underfloor with all our belongings, 2009. So I have not seen a big flood myself. I've only had the little ones. They've been big enough. 2 years as the unit commander. Tim Leader is cooking sausages on the other side. He is the previous unit commander. And I live at Urunga now. So we moved there 2 years ago. And I get isolated from Bellingen, so I need to make a call pretty early in the piece. Am I going to relocate my personal operation from Urunga to Bellingen and camp out at the headquarters? And I live in a flood-prone house at Urunga. So I'm relying on my friends at Urunga SES to help my wife and child if it all goes pear-shaped down there as well. So when I'm asking you to do something from my little base of operations on Southside, I'm also asking as a person, a father that's got a family in Urunga that I'm worried about as well. So what happens during a flood? Okay, the Bureau of Meteorology is what the SES relies on as well. So we don't have a magic box particularly. We've got the data directly. We get it at the same time as the Bureau before they release it publicly, but it's the same data. They give us warnings on expected rainfall and river heights. So their guess is as good as anything. We can't predict anything at all. The SES monitors the Bureau of Meteorology data and then issues our own flood warnings and watches and evacuations based on the Bureau data. The further out the data is in time, the more inaccurate it is. So a week out, less accurate. 3 days out, getting more accurate. 24 hours out, much more accurate. 12 hours, okay, I think they've got it. There's an operations centre in Wollongong. It's all the way down south, and they 24/7 monitoring, and they're the ones that issued the please evacuate from the north side to the high school on the south side in the last one. They didn't ask me. When there's a big flood, there'll be an emergency operations centre or an incident centre set up somewhere in a regional centre. It may be Coffs Harbour, it may be Port Macquarie, it may be Grafton. It won't be in Bellingen. And they have got 24-hour staff there, volunteers also there 24 hours a day, and they have their local command, I suppose you'd say. And locally, we get active when Thora gauge triggers at 3 metres. So that's our trigger point for here when we start getting worried, is when it starts getting high at Thora, because that water's got to come downstream to us. So Thora 3 metres is our trigger level, and that's about when the bridges start to go under, a bit over that. We've got a bunch of what we call flood action cards and flood incident cards. It's basically our in-house knowledge. The SES has been fairly tightly run with money for the last few years. Those cards have not been updated since 2015. So they're getting on to 7 years old, and we don't have paid staff at this stage doing any work on them. I'm hoping that may change, but I haven't heard anything at this stage. So it's getting old, but saying that, there's data back to 1870. So, okay, yes, it's 7 years old, but in the context, it's not that bad. We do try to position gear on the north side, but don't forget, yours is only one small catchment in the whole of our Bellingen SES operations, which extends all the way up the Kallang Valley, all the way up the Thora Valley, down to pretty much Fern Mount, a bit beyond down there that way, and then actually north side all the way over to Valerie and up over through there. So we've got a big base of operations that we need to get to, and I know you're important because you are you and you're number one for yourself, but it's also bigger for us as well. So we do have members that live on the north side, and in the last few floods we've been positioning a trailer and a vehicle over here to help out for stuff on the north side. We've got 3 boats in the Shire and they all live over on the south side, and we don't position any over on the north side because just the logistics of it, we need flood boat operators to be able to operate those boats. And so it just is a lack of resources really to be able to have a boat on every place. As you all know, 4.5 metres or so, 4.8, the bridge is closed. And after that, you're on your own little community on the north side. We'll likely issue an evacuation order if the water gets above 8 metres at Lavender's Bridge and is rising. So that's about, for us, we'd prefer to get in early, and the people hate that, but it's better to get in early than to be late. Okay, so how do we prepare for a flood? So a lot of this stuff comes off the SES page. There's so much information out there, so much. It's boggling. So, how to prepare? Flood risk. What's the flood risk in your suburb? Well, there's an SES page that can take you there. And I'm just going to see if I can do this. Oh, here we go. Let's see if it'll kick up. No, it didn't. So I'm just going to drag that across to there. There we are. So I'm going to just do that. So, enter your suburb. Can someone just drive this for me over this, see if we can get that down? All right. I just wanted to show you this. Just type in 2454. Yeah. That's it. You're there. Just click into it. Yeah. All right. 2454. All right, Bellingen. Do it again, please. That's it. And then see if we can select it. All right, if you scroll down with my little arrows. So there's all these for every state. All right, every area. So this is showing all the flood bulletins, warnings for the state at the moment. We are somewhere just here. So from the range west, there's a whole bunch of warnings at the moment for minor flooding. We're over there's no warnings at the moment. If you keep scrolling down, there's a whole bunch of information there, and then if you see if you can put your hand on the record floods and press that button there, gives you a little bit of information. Every catchment's different. This one will say, I have to scroll down, the record floods for the Bellingen River, and they've got April 2009, 3.5 metres, it goes da-da-da-da, and then November 1870, 11.55. Okay, so they've got 3 data points on there for the public. But there's a bunch of information that's available on the SES site. That's one of the points I just wanted to say that you can go to. We'll just see. Yep. Thanks. All right. Okay. So how do we prepare? We've got the maximum historical floods. We've got river conditions and warnings. Keep an eye out for all that, obviously. The Bellingen River catchment has what I call flash flooding, which means it comes up quickly. Yes, we get a bit complacent when it's happening because the water's up and it's hovering around 3 metres at thaw, and it's up and down, and it's up and down, it's up and down, and then we get our big burst and suddenly the water comes up quick. In 2004, where it got to 8.1 metres, the water rose 0.65 metres per hour, probably at about 3 o'clock in the morning. Usually is what it seems to do, middle of the night. So, 50 centimetres an hour, 60, 70 centimetres an hour. For me, that's flash flooding. Was it this year, last year? I can't remember now how many floods. I was in February this year, or March this year. Some people were camping near the swimming ground there, the little, what I call Cemetery Creek. Fire and rescue had to rescue them out of their camper van because they woke up in the morning to find the water around the camper van. It came up. 2009, we've heard that March, 8.7 metres. I just wanted to say sewage pumping station was inundated. Okay, so poo and wee in the water. April 1989, 8.6 metres. We started to evacuate at North Bellingen. 1967, it was a June flood, 8.84 metres. Obviously, we would have evacuated people. And 1974 was a March flood, 9.3 metres, and 10 properties were evacuated.
And that probably is because a lot of the properties actually didn't exist.
Yep. Yeah, there's more. There's infill. Yep. And you can see by that there's a March, there's an April, there's a June, there's a March. 1950, June, 10.4 metres to 10.78, 28 residents and 8 commercial properties flooded. I don't know which ones. I just got that off our flood intelligence card. And the other, I wanted to show this because the 1870, they said high velocity water in Hammond and Dow Street. So get your Lilo out. Not. Weather warnings. So Bureau of Meteorology has got all their weather warnings there. You can see I've done a little graphic of it. It's that yellow bit at the top of the page. All this assumes you're on the internet nowadays, you know? That's where the Neighbourhood Care Network is doing some great stuff, because they can give out warnings by SMS or just by people ringing each other or knocking on each other's doors. So we've got the Bureau of Meteorology for rain and river heights. Listen to the ABC. They go to their emergency broadcasting, 2BBB, media briefings, Bellingen SES page. We try to update it during flood events. Social media has been such a revolution for us in the last 10 years. The amount of phone calls I used to get from people saying, is Waterfall Way open or not? I don't get that anymore because they all look on Facebook. I use an app called Floods Near Me. It's a great little app on your phone. I'll show an info of it later on, but it's got the whole Bellingen Valley. It's got all the little infographics for where the gauges are and then what the minor, moderate majors are. You get SES warnings, which I'll show you about. I really wanted to say something about this in how to prepare is leave early. If you've got trips, don't drive at night or in the early morning. That seems to be the time. I nearly caught myself out at Fuller's in March. I was going for a bit of a reconnaissance at 5:30 a.m. and nearly drove into the floodwaters myself in the SES vehicle. Because in the night, the black bitumen, the water's black. Before I knew it, I was up to the wheels. People call me all the time and I say, stay in Coffs the day before. If it's going to be a major flood and you've got a medical appointment or you're going to fly somewhere the next day, stay in Coffs, please. If in doubt, go out early. You might feel like an idiot afterwards and you paid an extra $80, $100 or $200 if it's Airbnb. But okay, so we have a new warning system that's being rolled out by all emergency services essentially across Australia. They're all coming out in slightly different times, but we're trying to unify it across Australia. There'll be similar triangle symbology, but with slightly different pictures on the inside for the warning. So flood one is a house being carried off by water. You'll see that on there. If it's a tsunami, it's going to be a circle with a couple of arms. If it's a bushfire, it's going to be, the obvious things, but the same symbols, yellow, orange, red. Okay, how to prepare. You need a go kit. We've got at the front some little plastic sleeves. You should have something like, or not, a box or whatever it is your go kit. It's got some paraphernalia, including medications and prescriptions. You might have a radio in there with a battery. You may have a book because it can get boring when you're sitting around somewhere. Gloves, maybe if you're having to touch dirty water. A candle. It's romantic, isn't it? But power goes out. That kind of stuff. Matches. Clothing. It's not much fun in June when it floods and you have to evacuate and you've waded waist deep through water and it's cold. So dry clothes. So that's the kind of stuff that we suggest that you don't have it all the time, but when it's you know it's coming. We've got 12 hours notice, we've got a day's notice, we've got 3 days notice. We start to get our go kit together and we think about it and we start putting it together. Passports, obviously, children, dogs. So restock. Recharge electronic devices. Have you got your power bank for all those gadgets we have nowadays? What medication, food, paperwork. One of the annoying requests we get is for medication drops, and people have been isolated for only 12 hours. And I'm thinking, you knew that it was going to flood, You've been through this before. Why are you asking me to get a helicopter to drop you off some medication? But it happens. Okay, what do you do during a flood? Move belongings to higher ground. We've heard all this. Check on neighbours. That's what we're here for. Because we all live here. I'm just a volunteer. I live here as well. Evacuate early. Use friends and family. Dial 132500. But if it's life-threatening, dial 000. But if you dial 132500, I do hear complaints from people saying, but I was on there for half an hour and I still couldn't get through to the SES. I'm sorry, it's going to happen. There's nothing I can do about that, but it does happen that you are on hold for a long time. Give location. There's an Emergency Plus app that you can get. That's just a little quick thing of it. It's called Emergency Plus, supported by the SES and 000. It gives the lat and long coordinates. It gives those what 3 words coordinates as well. That can be really helpful for when someone says, "Where are you?" You can give them a coordinate if you're not too sure. Evacuations. All right, so Elliot Close, up top of the hill, is the evacuation centre. There's talk about moving it. If and when that happens, we don't know, but that's the location at the moment. And the high school on the south side. I suggest, Tracy, I hadn't checked this with you first, but register intent to evacuate so that you know how many people may turn up or not. You know how many beds to get ready or not. Yep. I think friends or family would be more comfortable, myself. But that's why I say to register, so they know that you've gone to a friends and family, and so we know as well. There's a helicopter landing zone for the north side on the corner of North Bank Road and Heights Creek Road. That paddock there is just as you hang a left. It's on the left-hand side there. I don't know if the farmer knows that, but that's our helo landing zone. But the amount of times we've asked for helicopter assistance and they can't make it in because the cloud level's too low or it's too rainy, they've got poor visibility. So generally what happens is when it's all going off and it's flooding and the whole thing, the helicopters aren't any good. It's only afterwards, and that's when you see us flying around taking lovely photos because it's nice blue sky by then. What does the SES do? We try to give you advance notice by radio, print, online, messaging, phone calls, whatever. We'll do our best. We will advise NCN for location-based SMS. We did that during the last event, and I hope that helped. We liaise with the hospital because they're always asking about staff, RFS, fire and rescue, so they can position their assets over on the north side. They're getting better at it, and we are as well. We'll door knock to advise evacuation. We'll respond to a request for assistance, 132500, but you need to be self-reliant. Liz Moore taught us that. Again, it's really, we're there, but we're only limited. And response is triaged. If it's life-threatening, it's more important than property. We'll issue evacuation orders, but there may be a short time. You know, it may be you've got half an hour, or maybe we say 2 days in advance, and then you're waiting, and then you decide not to evacuate. And it may be that it's a week before you can come back in. That was a bit of a complaint in the last event as well, is that after a flood and evacuation, we need to assess the property, and that can take time. Yeah. Once you've been evacuated, you have to stay away. Please don't come back. Because just putting us under more stress, we're trying to manage lots of things. I don't know if there's any other reasons. There could be an official reason why. I'm not exactly clear myself. All I know is I've got it up to here at that time, and if I hear about people running around trying to get back into their house and then they've hurt themselves and they've broken their shoulder or whatever it is, then that's just more. Yep, and it's slippery, it's dirty, something could fall down, the whole thing. Yep. Guy in Wollongong, because there's a damage assessment team. So it's the Port Macquarie guy or the Grafton guy who's sending out the people to do the damage assessment, and then they report back, and then they give the all clear. All right? It's out of my hands by then. Okay, what does the SES... that's what the SES does. What do we not do? We don't open or close a bridge, and we don't know exactly when that'll happen. The amount of times council have said to us, yes, we're going to close a bridge, and then I tell people that, and then I get an angry phone call saying, it's still open, they're just standing there next to the gate, letting people go through. And I go, but they told me they were shutting it half an hour ago. Yeah, I've got no control. I don't have any information on road openings or closures, when it's going to open or closed. That's completely, it's either council or it's RMS, depending. Waterfall Way is RMS, it's not council, okay? If the river rises rapidly between 12 a.m. and 6 a.m., which it does, we may not notify you in time. It is a tricky time for us between 12 a.m. and 6 a.m. because we're retired as well, and we're volunteers, and it's tricky to get someone to sit around watching the bridge at that time. We will not provide food or medical drops if you're isolated for too short a time. The expectation is you've been prepared, you've been warned. We'll probably not have capacity to move belongings or animals during a major event, it's going to be triaging. I'm going to be doing other stuff. I'll probably not rescue animals as well. We have done that during the last event. Got some cows out of the high school, but that was because I had some free time then. And we may not door knock a second time. All right. SES data and limitations. We have four. We rely on the bomb rain gauges, and there's three that we rely on: Thora at the top of the valley, Glenifer that comes in sideways, and Lavender's Bridge. And they're not always open. Glenifer's intermittent, gets taken out a lot, and Lavender's Bridge has been playing up lately. We are missing a bunch of data. Rosewood Creek feeds in and can smash the Bellingen River. Hydes Creek and Frenchman's Creek downstream from us can also hold up the water, and the tide can play a factor as well. There are council cameras, but they do lose power because they're solar powered and the batteries aren't great. Combu so far has been the most reliable one because it's on 240 volt mains. We're usually too busy to collect our own data. The reality is we would love to, but we just don't seem to be able to get out there and monitor heights over time. As a result, there's a new Water Watch initiative that Ausgreen and NCN are trialling to get some community members monitoring water levels at about 6 locations in the valley. And they're going to be our Water Watch champions. And we've been developing an app. So we're going to see how that goes. Oh, hello. And once it's at 4.8 metres and Lavender's Bridge is under, then SES HQ is isolated from the north side. Okay. Boat crossing is difficult for us until about 6 metres because there's so much debris on the bridge and we don't have a great launching spot. Once the water gets high enough, we can launch off what I call Hammond Street, the boat ramp that comes down from Waterfall Way. Until then, it's really tricky for us to get into the river. We don't have a boat ramp. We tried to get one a few years ago, but it was too tricky to get it through council at the time. Helicopter access is limited by availability and weather. So that is the Floods Near Me app, and that's a zoomed in showing the Northside Bellingen, and it shows what the water level is at Bellingen River and then the minor, moderate, major, and it graphs it for you as well. It's quite a handy little app. Okay, so the last bit of my talk is a call for volunteers. That's the bulk of our Bellingen SES unit. There's about 15 of us active. Usually 2 to 5 of us respond at any one time. Age from 75, Tim who's in the back there, and 17, Mason who's in the back there by chance. They're our age range. Depending on, and what we use you for depends on ability, experience, training and preference. We muster every second Tuesday. Intake is preferable in the beginning of the year or midway, but we'll take anyone whenever. And we do weekend training and it's all qualified. But what I did want to say is we're a community-run organisation, and you don't just have to be an SES volunteer. On the left are the unit volunteers, us wearing orange, but there's also community action team volunteers, what we call spontaneous volunteers, people that turn up to help out with the brooms and sandbagging, and corporate volunteers. That's where your company helps pay for you to have some time off every month to volunteer with the SES, with Red Cross, with whomever. It's an initiative that is trying to get more volunteers because the statistics are saying that there's less and less people volunteering across Australia, not just for the SES in general. So we do need volunteers. That's it for me. Okay.
Thanks very much, Strider. There was so much in that, it was really interesting and really useful. And I was sitting here thinking about all the people in uniform standing up the back and the people in your crew, and I reckon this is a good chance for us just to show our heartfelt appreciation for all of the work that New South Wales Fire and Rescue and the SES and the Rural Fire Service do. As a group mainly of community volunteers doing their damnedest to keep us safe. So.
And it's not just
Great. Thanks, Strider. I just want to say a couple of things about the Neighbourhood Care Network before we open it up. I know that you've been sitting here for a long time and the sausage sizzles are just around the corner, but we're getting closer. We do have the Bush Telegraph as one of the things that we do, which is a SMS alert system. If you're already a Neighbourhood Care Network member, you probably have received those alerts mainly around COVID, but in one of the floods, as Strider said, he asked us to send an SMS giving people a heads up, and we're starting to build relationships with the SES and the Rural Fire Service to use the Bush Telegraph in a targeted way, and we're going to be able to send those SMS alerts to different areas across the Shire and the surrounding area with validated local information. So when you're thinking about joining the Neighbourhood Care Network or updating your details, just want to give you a heads up that Bush Telegraph SMS alert service is increasing its remit around the sort of information that we're generating, and targeted information that's verifiable that you can rely on, which is really important. And also that the local neighbourhood groups which are being set up, as Strider mentioned on the way through, are doing some work so that local groups of neighbours agree how they're going to communicate with each other and look out for each other, especially if we're in a period of time when the services go down and we've got no power and there's an extended sort of downtime like that, you know, big flood, lots of power outages. So that's another reason, no matter where you live in North Bellingen, to sign up and be part of this lightly organised network of people who can help each other during the prep and through the emergency and the recovery. So with that little plug, and big thanks to Strider and everyone involved in these teams, I just want to open up for some discussion. So we're really interested to hear from people who've lived here for a while and have been through some of these floods and remember some of those stories. And also there are probably people in the room who have things that you think that we could do on the north side to better prepare ourselves. Keen to hear about that too. So if we just sort of have a show of hands. I know the gentleman with his hand up was next when we started last time, so we might start off with you. And Jane's just going to...
Thanks, Kerry. Hi, everyone. I'm Silas Taylor. I live on north side up at Sky Place, thankfully on high ground. Bully for me. And we will be happy to billet people in the event of a flood. We've got space and we'll be happy to do so. So just to put that forward. And also thanks, Kerry, for getting the organisations here, and NCN done a fantastic job. We joined when we moved here. We almost didn't move in because of a flood, and we've had several since arriving. Look, lots of things to say, but I won't say them. I'll just say one, which is one of the things that we've been concerned about is kids drop off from school. We had our son dropped in town when the bridge was flooded, and it was only through the very kind offer of a lift, which actually turned out to be, well, frankly, dangerous, drive home around the way, that he got home to us. Probably I know a bit left field for what you're talking about here mostly, but like, yeah, dropping kids was an issue, and you know, just thought I'd raise that because I think it is a serious concern.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that we struggle with each time, because we need to give parents notice as early as possible in the day if there's going to be a flood, so they don't take their kids to school, or if there is going to be a flood that it's going to hit in the afternoon, that they've got time. And I've had it this year where we called a pick-up at 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning, and people only dropped off their children at 8:30, 9 o'clock. I do our best. Well, I do my best, but it's not always easy to know when it's going to happen, and we can get caught out as well. I'll just put my hand up and say that we don't do it as well as we could. I always go back to parents and say, look out the window, it's been raining, the water's up, you've got to take responsibility as well for your children and make a call. Do you think it's going to go over. Do you think you want your child on the other side or not? And don't rely on the SES all the time. Be responsible.
I wouldn't think it's beyond the realms of possibility that if you're in a situation and the kids are stuck on the south side and you're on the north side, get in touch with the Neighbourhood Care Network. People will support each other. If you're stuck on south side, you think you need to be back home and you don't really, we'll find somewhere for you to stay. Bella will look after you. So. Plans can be made. We'll make sure that there's working with children checks.
So the children getting kids back from school or making the call about whether they go to school in the first place is a big issue. I just want to respond to Silas's offer for billeting help, because we've modified the NCN membership form and have asked a couple of extra questions. If you do live in North Bellingen and you're happy to help, put your hand up to billet, or you're happy to be on a crew to help people do their pack up because the flood's coming, or help them unpack, there's a couple of questions in our membership form. So we're going to ask all of you to think about joining today before we let you out to the snags, and update your membership if you already have, so we can easily build a register of people in Upper North Bellingen who can help. And we can do that prep now before, we're facing another flood. Yeah, and so we want to link people up with who think they could use a billet and introduce them to their billet, so you can meet each other during good times and get to know each other and know you're not going to be a unwanted guest or an imposition, and so we build those local relationships. So there's a Jane just next to you, Caro, and then the lady next to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge the relationships that already exist in our little neighbourhood here in Lower North Bellingen, because I've been through a number of floods now, and I was a proud member of the SES until I needed to be rescued, and then it was time to leave. But it's really important during flood time, the people we live near are the people that we rely on. So Wade lives up the road from me, and I know if there's a flood that he'll make sure I'm okay. So acknowledging that over many, many years for some of us, these relationships have come together. There's also an amazing awareness in our neighbourhood of the showground. We all look after the showground, we all care about the showground and what happens here during flood time. So I think it's really good to acknowledge that those relationships are there, and for any further meetings of this kind, to really try and concentrate on the people getting together, the people sort of...
So can I just respond to that? Caro's made a really important point, and I should have said much earlier on that the Neighbourhood Care Network isn't about coming in over the top, starting something new. It's about building on the relationships that already exist.
Yeah.
And that's fundamental. This meeting we took a call was about all of North Bellingen, because and there's already 5 local neighbourhood groups in North Bellingen, and there's a need, there's lots of pockets that don't have any, so we couldn't do a small local neighbourhood group meeting, but Tracy is really keen to meet with people. She's the coordinator for Lower North Bellingen, where all those relationships Caro just talked about, and start doing that sort of slightly more formal planning together.
All support for the Neighbourhood Care Network. One other comment that I'd like to make, because so many of my neighbours have spoken about it to me, is the importance of local contact, because it's been nationalised, and so when people ring up, we might speak to somebody who's got absolutely no idea where we are, and in the past couple of floods, it's been quite confusing for people, because we've received text messages to evacuate from, you need to evacuate because you're from East Bellingen. Well, we're not. We're We're from North Bellingen. So that's a bit confusing, and it's quite scary for people. So I really believe that the technology is wonderful, but you can't replace your neighbourhood. And the people who are doing the neighbourhood, the national network, must always be aware that local knowledge is what they need to be effective.
And I think that's what this neighbourhood care network will facilitate and enable as well. The last flood, I stood knee deep in water out the back of Daddle's place, looking at it, thinking she's just passed, but 90, and I'm thinking, is she out? Is she in there? Did Ray and Rhonda get her out? I don't know. SES weren't around yet. That was between 12 and 6 a.m. So I want to make sure if Wade's away, is somebody else going to take care of you, so that we've all got all of that concreted and covered, and it also allows that upwards conversation. So, I would be able to hear from you guys and then go, hang on, we're actually in strife, ring the 132 500 and get that local information back up. So yes, that's what the NCN absolutely will do, and what I'm hoping to do with this little lower North Bellingen is us to really coordinate as a little community and make sure that we know what plans everybody has to look after one another, and that there's backup plans if we need them.
Great. Thanks, Tracy, and thanks, Caro. It was important that we know we're building on those really important relationships that are already there. So, are there any other, the lady right next to Caro?
Following on from this gentleman, I have been involved in fire emergencies, and it is really scary for the kids who are stranded at school as well as parents. Maybe we could have an area that the buses could drop the children to go to a home. I've got a working with children, so there's no reason why they couldn't be dropped off all at one local point, even if it's half a dozen kids, so the parents would know my child's safe, it's left at that safe carers person, I will pick them up when I can get back from work, because a lot of people are working and they can't just suddenly arrive at school to pick up their children during an emergency. But it will take the fear from the kids that, I'm safe until mum comes or dad comes.
So how about we take getting some local arrangements in place together and getting organised about it in terms of kids drop-offs from school, and we'll do some work. We'll contact the North Bellingen people on our neighbourhood care network list, and we'll do a bit of work together to get some systems in place that supplement the systems that are already there.
The children also need to know which bus to get onto, so it needs to coordinate with the school as well.
So all of that will work. Let's not try and workshop it now, but we've got it as an issue, and we'll get a working process in place to work it through. And if you were happy and Silas was happy to do some joint thinking about it with us, that'd be great. There's a lady here down the front, and then I think I saw Jim. Yep.
Just a little bit of local history from years ago. I was born and bred here, and in the 1950 flood, which I can't remember because I was only a baby, but information was that and I've got photos, the flood came up to the roundabout almost, and everybody below that area was evacuated, some for up to 2 weeks. And the flood came up from the river that time, but the 2009 was from the drains and the overflows and the floodways up above us. So the amount of water that came down in the 2009, just from the overflow, was equivalent in height to what the river came up in the 1950. So that on top of the flood level coming from the river, if that happens, it's going to be pretty disastrous.
I was talking to Lee Fitzgerald, Cole Fitzgerald's missus, the other night. He couldn't make it today. He said never goes anywhere, but today he had plans. And Lee remembers she was 7 in the 1950 flood, and they were living on the south side. They were living on the Thora Road, and she said on the hill with the fence, every surge would just take up another fence post. So it was just this surge, and up it went and surged. So a bit like what I feel like I heard Lismore happening. It just kept rising so
Well,
fast.
Yeah, and in the 1950, there were half a dozen houses in Wheatley Street and about 4 in Lion Street. So since then, all of the housing that has been built all drains into that creek near Planet and comes down through the FM radio. So that taken into account, is pretty going to be different.
And it's a shame Pud's not here because, and well, Helen might know too, past my place where the little units are that always get flooded, that was a creek. Bob, you remember?
Yeah.
That was a creek
That was
across.
a creek, yeah. It went through the back of the showground down
Yes.
to the river and went out to the river below there.
So that's why we still get that big
That
build up
flow,
on Hammond
yeah,
that
yeah,
cuts Hammond
yeah.
off. So
Yeah.
there's lots of considerations. I wish Pud had been here because he knows all the, the plumbing and piping and stuff too.
That's right. Well, that's something that we need to find out too about the drainage of the waterways, the storm drains, whether they're being cleaned out because there's lots of bamboo on that creek now, and the amount of debris that falls from a bamboo clump is horrendous, and whether it's being washed through these drains and whether the water can get away. And there's also holes in the culvert drain near the doctor's surgery there. So there's a backflow.
We'll park that, Steve.
Yeah, we had 24 people in our house for 2 weeks in our house in the 1950 flood.
I was hoping you'd put your hand up.
Oh, 24 people in Wheatley Street in one house for 2 weeks during the 1950 flood. So, I mean, that's sort of making it a little bit more practical and real for us around what we might face again.
And I don't think it's if. I really believe it's when.
Yeah.
It's coming.
That, pardon me, that floodgate, I think it's a floodgate on that pipe out of the creek by the medical centre over here. But once the river level gets up to the floodgate, it's automatically closed and backs up anyhow. So there's nothing really much you can do with it if that's how it is.
And so that's like that mapping that Ian's done. It's really then just filling the cup. It's just going to keep...
Well, the water can't go anywhere.
Yep.
Because if the floodgate's not shut, the water can't go out because of the river. The river's higher than the floodgate.
And what, 10.5 would...
I don't know what it is actually, but remember when they put it in there, there was going to be a problem with it, and that's what the problem is, I suppose. The water that's up there then drains into the creek above Planet, and it can't go anywhere other than flood the rest of North Bellingen or down through the showground here. Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think Jim in front of you.
I got 2 points, both probably applicable. One is drains, because even when we get just heavy rain, the drains on the north side, there are so many of them that are just full of organic matter and blocked. Yep. That water just runs off, and then that just runs through wherever. And that's moving water, and that's a real problem.
Yep.
And the other one, which I've talked to Tracy about, is if we have a flood, there are no facilities on the north side of town. We have one set of toilets down by the river. And like last night, there was a show on down there. There was 150, 200 people trying to use one male, one female toilet. There's no lights on them, there's no nothing.
So that's a big infrastructure
It's an
priority
infrastructure
for us, isn't
thing.
it?
And if you've got a flood over here, anyone who doesn't have access to their own toilet is in deep doo-doo.
Yep, so to speak. Yes. So that's a really important priority, which, we're going to be doing some work after this meeting and meeting with council for things that relate to infrastructure and trying to sort of understand what is already underway and what we can help advocate for, and that's clearly a no-brainer, that one.
It's just, while you're on the subject of doo-doo, the other thing is that when we do flood and when there is water hanging around, it's full of doo-doo. So when you're thinking about going out later, just remember that you are walking through raw sewage, because Hammond Street, Dow Street, all of it, the sewage will be inundated, it'll be coming up. So just another thought.
So we've got 5 minutes to go before we're going to call it time and hit the snags. And I can see someone up the back and then someone down the middle, and we've probably got time for one more and then we'll call it quits.
So just adding to Jim's comment about the toilets, the telephone box, the only public telephone box in town, is on the corner of Hammond and Dow on this side. It's in the peak flood zone.
Yeah.
It's a stupid place for it to be. It's next to my house.
Yeah.
But if that could be moved up to higher ground, because that's a telephone that people can use when there's no power.
Great point. Thank you.
And all council toilets stay left open. We've just had them closed throughout COVID and for many months near the swimming pool, and people would just go and pee in the crap along the riverbank. And that's just how it is.
So it's getting the toilets in place and keeping them open and getting a public phone box on higher ground. Now I saw someone in the middle, Mrs. Murphy.
Thank you. Yeah, look, between 80 and 85, we had the service station at North Bellow here, and we'd been in a couple of months, and I noticed this metal band on the telegraph pole out the front, and when I walked up to have a look at it, it had the 1974 flood level. Well, I stood there and put my hand up as far as I could reach, and at the bottom of that, and that was the flood level in 1974 in Hammond Street, and during that time there were several floods. And I can't remember what year, but we had a tabletop truck and we moved people out of Black Street, some of their gear, because the floods were up over our knees, and in Black Street shifting people's furniture, like because they're down low and it dipped off the road and the water was coming up to all their stuff that was there, but they could get up higher. So maybe people who can help people shift their stuff before the floods, you know. And there was several floods in the 80s, lots, and it came right up into the service station. So that 74 flood, and then they eventually moved that sign off the pole when they opened up Sky's subdivision up the top. Right. So it'd probably be a good idea to have those flood levels replaced.
Yeah, we've been talking about doing that. I think that's a great idea. And where we can see it,
could know.
it's a visual.
We thought, oh my God, 74. Yeah. And then when those floods came, so we were more prepared to help people do things, but we had no idea beforehand.
Yeah, and we are wanting to build a register of people who can just get down here, get a call from us and say people need help packing their stuff up. We can moderate it so it's not just sort of strangers from anywhere, and you can be confident that the security issues are sorted out, and we can all get in as a community and help people who are going to be affected pack up and then unpack. Ian, that yellow tape you put up.
Yeah, so I did some rough calculations, and the 11.5 flood would have hit the power and fuses on the wall just to the left of the screen there.
Which year was that?
11.5, 1870.
Right.
The 1870 flood. And 2 metres above that, as I mentioned, our record got broken by 2 metres. The water went out to the batten just under the beam there. That's how high the water would go.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Ian.
With the pavilion, I've got local knowledge that the pavilion didn't go under in the 1950 flood. So I was working on the height beam, the water being just outside near the corner of the building.
Yeah, that's why I was curious about that marker on the telegraph.
So I think we had one more person and I've lost who it was. Last call? No? Great.
I will say there's a really good marker out the front of the vet. Looking at the vet, there's a pole to the left, and it's got the 52 flood, and it's overwhelming.
Unfortunately, we're a north side perspective today, Annie.
But I think it's a great idea. It's a great idea to get some visual markers up, and that'll go on the list.
Yeah. So, guys, if everyone can hang around for the Barbie, and I'd encourage you to speak amongst yourself, talk to your neighbours. Those that have been here and know more about the floods, talk about the floods. I think there's a lot of, like I said before, there's a lack of information. The lower North Bellow, so Hammond, Dowell and Black, I would like to organise for us all to come together and make that sort of more intimate plan that we were talking about. And I also wanted to put my hand up in my little camphor chest is some USBs because I've scanned all of my photos and got all my special things in there. I've got a little appy and a scanner, so I'm happy to come around and scan your photos. And, it's that sort of forward thinking. It's all in a tub, it's in the car, you're out. Just take some of that panic out of the whole situation. What are we going to put on the list?
The Mayor was just saying one of the things we haven't talked about is the evac centre issue, and that we really need a reliable spot for a bigger spot for an evacuation centre, and that's definitely on the list.
Yes, so with my DCJ hat on, which I guess, so the Communities and Justice, the old facts, docs, they are the in-the-moment response, so to run the evacuation centre. The only thought, Suzanne Cady, I don't know if people remember Graham, but Suzanne, his wife, Graham Cady, the old sergeant over here, she's now the Deputy WellFac for coordinating our area. She couldn't make it today. The only place I can think of is Mount Tabor. My understanding is it's owned by a church. I'm happy to go and knock on the door. Apparently, Walter, that owned the property, doesn't actually own Mount Tabor, so it's a matter of going and knocking on the door and seeing if the nuns are amenable to taking care of us if we need to. I think there would be very few people who would need it if we get this billeting system strong. But yes, we do need to have it. So if anybody's got any other ideas on where might be a good space, let me know and I'll get the DCJ side to chase.
Great, thanks Tracy. So I think we're just about to hit the lion's sausage sizzle. I just want to make a couple of closing remarks. On your seat, we didn't do this lightly, so please take this material home. There's a leaflet that says North Bellow Get Ready Flood Tips. We went through all of the material that Strider talked about on the SES site. We looked at some material that the Kalang Progress Association had prepared, and we also picked Tracy's brains, and we've prepared this leaflet which you could just stick on your fridge or have in your drawer that brings the headline information together. That'll supplement the material that Strider's got, but please don't ditch that, please use it. We've also got a little feedback form. We'd really like you to take some time in a minute just to give us some feedback about this session. Was it worth it? What would you want us to do differently? We're thinking about whether we do this in other parts of the Shire, so we would really appreciate your views about, whether it's been worth your time today. And also want to give a big plug to join the Neighbourhood Care Network. If you already are in it and you get our texts, please update your records, and if you go into the membership link, that's where you can say you're happy to take a billet or you're happy to be on a group that can help people in lower North Bellingen pack up and unpack after floods. So the way that you can do that is that, how are we doing it, Jane?
So the more colourful brochure.
This one, the DL.
This one. It has a little QR code.
Because we all know what to do with them, most of us now.
Most phones, to do a QR code, you open your camera and you point it at it and it'll show up a little URL that you can click on, and that takes you straight to register. The evaluation form also works that way, so our first preference with the evaluation form is for you to use that QR code and do it online, otherwise I have to type it all in.
But if you can't, just fill the form in and leave it on your form, and if you don't do QR codes, Jane and I and Ian can help you register today. So that's not the only way to do it, but if you do have a smartphone and you can do your QR code, that would be great, and otherwise we'll help you register. Yep. That's how we're doing it, yeah?
Yep.
Great. So I've just got a couple of thanks. It takes a lot of people in the background to get an event like this happening. And I really, really want to thank Tracy for taking the initiative and reaching out to us and saying, how about we do this? So I think big round of applause for Tracy. Thank you. Really want to thank the Mayor for coming and listening to that conversation and opening us and getting us going. It was great to have you here. Thanks to Strider and the SES crew. and the fire and New South Wales Fire and Rescue who brought the truck down and have been the men in the uniform up the back with the rest of the SES crew, the Lions Club who are cooking up a storm, so please stick around. We've got the sausages and the falafel from Zatars, and just catch up with everyone and have a snag before you go. Really want to thank Jim, who's been from the Prov, who's been promoting this for us and has peeled onions and done a whole lot of other things behind the scenes, and Tim, who had a Lions and an SES hat on. Valley Quality Meats, who gave us a good deal on the sausages, and Zatars on the falafel. Triple B, who is partnering with the NCN, and we're going to be working together to keep on getting more and more targeted information out together. And they did a real good promo for us for nothing over the last week. And lastly, want to thank the Showground Trust. Lots of effort goes into keeping this wonderful place going, and they waived the fee for us to use the hall, and just big thanks to all the volunteers on the Showground Trust who make this the great place that it is. That's all I hope. Oh, and particularly want to thank Jane and Ian who are on the Neighbourhood Care Network team and put a lot of effort into preparing for today. I hope I haven't forgotten anybody. And Annie and Mark, of course. Please do go to our website if you want to delve into any of those maps. You'll find it under the resources tab. It's neighbourhoodcarenetwork.org.au. That contact address is on the material on your seats. When you finish, if you just move your chairs back a bit from the corner, if anyone wants to look at the hard copies, we'll leave them up in the back of the room for half an hour or so. And just take a minute or two to register for the network, and then come around the corner and have a snag with us. So thank you very much, everyone. We didn't know if people would come, and it's really great to see that we had a full hall.